listener. I will be reading a bedtime story from one of my new favorites on my bookshelf. Today's story is all about the Loch Ness Monster. On September 13th, 1933, Mr. and Mrs. McKay were driving down a newly opened road running alongside of Scotland's biggest lake, Loch Ness, when they were startled by the appearance of a huge slimy monster around 33 feet long, 10 meters, with a head and neck like a big snake, which careered across the road and disappeared into the undergrowth. News reports of the encounter kick-started a media sensation, and the Loch Ness Monster was born. This was not, however, the first time that an aquatic monster had been associated with the Loch Ness region. According to The Life of St. Columba, written by St. Adamnan, an abbot of Iona who died in 704, the Irish abbot and missionary Columba encountered such a beast in 565 CE, and is quoted to say, "The blessed man who obliged to cross the river Ness, and when he reached the bank of the river, he saw some of the inhabitants burying an unfortunate man who was, a short time before, seized, as he was swimming, and bitten most severely by a monster that lived in the water. Bravely, the blessed man ordered someone else to go in the water, but when the monster felt the water disturbed above by the man swimming, it suddenly rushed out with an awful roar. Undaunted, Columba made the signal of the cross and ordered the beast to go back with all speed, whereupon the monster was terrified and fled more quickly than if it had been pulled back with ropes. This was not the only marine monster Columba encountered, and Nessie is far from being the only monster to haunt the waterways of the world. Leaving aside the multitudes of sea monsters reported over the centuries, lake monsters have been reported from 250 of the world's lakes and rivers, 24 of them in Scotland alone. Following Nessie, many of them have earned sobriquets of their own, including Manipogo from Lake Manitoba in Canada, Champ from Lake Champlain on the US-Canadian border, and the Migo of Lake Tacuna in New Britain. Although skeptics say this last beast has been wrongly identified from the video footage of a man standing up in a canoe. In Sweden, Lake Sturgeon is home to a fabled monster which was the target of a sustained monster hunting campaign in the 1890s after it was reported to have menaced young girls. Supposedly, a company was formed to try to trap the monster. Jetties were built, holes cut into the ice, and a Norwegian whaler armed with a harpoon was retained. They even had a giant trap constructed, but to no avail. In 1957, it was claimed that the 19th century monster hunt had been a tall story fabricated to draw up tourism. Clearly, a lake monster is a powerful draw. In Scotland, though, McKay's tale unleashed a wave of sightings, and photographic evidence was soon to follow. In 1934, Army surgeon Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Robert Wilson took what has since become known as the surgeon's photo, a black and white picture, appearing to show the classic Nessie silhouette of a small head at the end of a serpentine body, rising from just below the surface. The surgeon's photo was later revealed to be a hoax created by sticking a plastic model onto a toy submarine, but public enthusiasm for Nessie was undaunted. Interest flared up again in 1960 when Tim Dinsdale caught on film a humped object moving across the loch, apparently around 7 miles per hour. And this was followed by sonar traces of an unidentified mass off of Urquhart Castle, one of the most productive locations for sightings. In the 1970s, underwater cameras produced several sensational images, including what looked like a rhomboidal flipper, but what appeared to be a long-necked, flippered creature. But repeated expeditions to explore, scan, and probe the loch, together with decades of surface observations, have failed to produce conclusive evidence that Nessie really exists. One problem is the loch itself, a unique body of water with features that make it ideal for hiding such a large monster. It is 24 miles long and 1 mile wide, and may have underwater connections to the sea. Use of sonar is difficult because of the great depth of the loch, up to 975 feet. The canyons of its deeply rich floor and its overhanging sides. Which create zones of sonar shadow. Visually scanning the loch is equally challenging. The surface is frequently misty and the water is thick with particles of peat from surrounding land, making underwater visibility close to nil. The region is frequently overcast, and when the water is in shadow, it is notoriously difficult to see below the surface or judge distances accurately. There are multiple problems with the theory that lake monsters like Nessie are prehistoric survivors. Firstly, the Loch Ness is a cold freshwater lake, perhaps not the best habitat for a marine reptile that is believed to have been cold-blooded. Even if some species of plesiosaur had survived the extinction that wiped out its own relatives, it would have required a large breeding population to remain viable over millions of years. Loch Ness is too resource poor to support such a population, although believers argue that submarine tunnels connect the loch to the open sea. But what about monsters reported from even smaller lakes far from the sea, such as that spotted in Lake Van, high in the mountains of eastern Turkey? More to the point, a considerable population of large creatures, which need to come to the surface to breathe, could surely not remain concealed from legions of monster hunters. No remains of any such animal have ever been found on the shores of the loch. Alleged sea monster carcasses have been recovered from the sea and seashores, but all of those that have been investigated have been shown to be badly decomposed carcasses of non-cryptid animals, such as basking sharks. The corpses of large sharks rot in a way that makes them look like the sea serpent. The most likely explanation for the lake monster sightings, such as Nessie, is misidentification of normal animals or other subjects, combined with influences from folkloric traditions of monsters. Scotland, for instance, has a long tradition of kleptes, horse-like fairy creatures that live in lakes. Non-cryptozoology stimuli blamed for monster sightings include misidentified sturgeon, seals or otters, floating logs, the hulls of upturned boats, or lumps of rotting vegetation, buoyed by methane, giant conger eels, oarfish or dragonfish, which are rare types of deep-sea fish that can be many feet or meters long. Many waterspouts or rows of leaping porpoises, spiders, and long necks with small heads. But there are many other types of water monsters reported around the world. Cryptozoologists, those who study conventionally unrecognized creatures, agree that most of them must be prehistoric survivors, ancient species that somehow escaped extinction. Along with the plesiosaurs, other candidates include pliosaurs or giant marine reptiles, prehistoric whales with sinuous bodies, giant otters, and unknown species of long-necked seals. Thank you so much for